Well, and I've said this before. I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but I was watching some documentary quite a few years ago, and this guy that was a sociopath, how he would know which girl to pick is he would go into a grocery store and bump her. And if she said she was sorry, he had his target. And it's that easy for somebody to decide that you're easy to take.
And that's the thing, like that's what keeps them, that's what this myth that women are inviting abuse. These guys will literally go after people with abuse in their history because it makes them look less credible. Bethany, were you going to say something about the no contact orders? Because I think that's totally worth
Yes,
talking.
yes. I left mine. I'm almost at a year out of my abusive relationship. It was July of last year. I'm in Texas, and so one of the laws here is that you can't get a protective order in a different county. So my abuse had happened in a separate county, and I was like way on the other side of Texas in a women's shelter. And I had an advocate, they were working with me with working through the legal things I had to do. And I applied for a protective order because I was literally scared for my life. He had already sent in welfare checks to every place he could think of that I would be, used all kinds of stories, said I had a history of drug abuse, said I was probably around people that used drugs, or that I had left without bottles for my 1-year-old who was breastfed, first of all. I had his diaper bag. So he just had made up all kinds of stuff, right? I was smart enough that I took pictures and I took everything throughout it because I knew I was going to have proof at some point. And they said, well, I'm not saying that the abuse didn't happen, but you have to be an established resident in this county for 90 days before you can get a protective order because the abuse did not happen in this county.
And then there's like this,
Crazy.
there's this issue also of even when you do get the protective order, the no contact orders, the protective orders, they frustrate me to no end. I think they're a great thing to get because it puts the onus on the police to come to your house if you see the guy. And that is worth it. However, the expectation that a piece of paper is going to stop somebody who is willing to commit homicide is ridiculous. And we all know, look, everybody knows what the police response times are in their area. Sure, the protective order means if you see him across the street, you can call the police. How long does it take to shoot somebody? How long does it take to strangle them versus how long does it take the police to come in your town? Right? So you have that issue of that it's fundamentally kind of not enough when somebody becomes truly dangerous. And then you also have this issue of the act of filing them. It's not like you go in and say, oh, somebody beat me, I want a no contact order.
No,
You have to
there's a whole long process.
you have to go to court. You have to face the abuser. You have to piss this guy off in court. Who is, if he wants to kill you, a piece of paper is not going to stop him. So you're going to see him in court. You're going to tell on him in front of a room full of people. You're going to be put under a certain level of scrutiny, which we see constantly reinforced. And like, I'm sure I'm not going to make a lot of friends saying this, but that Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial was so triggering to me because that woman, that was a civil case. The thing at issue was, did she defame him by writing a piece about her abuser without even using his name? And she lost that case. And she was humiliated in public, and the internet went off after her when, she didn't even name the guy in the article. It was a defamation case. How do you think that's going to go in criminal court? It's not. So, and women pay attention. We see that stuff. We watch that stuff. We all watch Judy's cross-examination where it's like, oh, did you, when you were using 10 years ago, ever take anything from your mom? She's like, yeah, I did. Does that mean you should be lit on fire? Because a defense attorney will make it sound like it does. And that's his job. So expecting these women to go show up in court, tick this guy off, and it's not even going to result in him being necessarily guaranteed to be physically kept away from you. How could you put that much onus on a potential victim? How could you do that? It doesn't make sense.
Well, and the way that we talk to women, to girls, as opposed to boys when we're growing up. We learn this from a very young age. I mean, I remember in my 30s driving down the street, and a man stepped out, a big guy stepped out, and I didn't realize something was different in the signage that I was driving on. And he happened to be in law enforcement, and he happened to be an abuser. And because it was in the papers. But he stepped out into the street, and his whole chest puffed up to let me know I was in trouble with how I was driving. And it was that little thing, that little shift that made me go, roll down the window. I said, I'm sorry, I just didn't realize. And I thought to myself, why am I reacting to somebody? I just made a mistake. I didn't kill anybody. I wasn't driving too fast or anything like that. It was just, you know, like I said earlier, don't take this too far. What's too far? What does too far mean? And I can't have a voice, and I can't speak, and I can't have conversation about this. I just don't get it. I don't understand. I mean, I do, but I don't.
And the dismissiveness that comes when you are angry, because this makes me angry. I'm not an angry person. I'm angry because the world doesn't fully recognize my humanity. The world didn't fully recognize Judy's humanity. The appropriate response is to fight that. And then it's like, you know, a female displaying any sort of anger is, I mean, look, we can all think of a couple nouns and adjectives that get thrown at you immediately when you're upset, even if it's about your very life. And so they also disempower you from fighting back, like, verbally, right? And it's such a catch-22, and it's so much, you know, in screening this film and these impact screenings and trying to promote this film, the idea that it's too harsh, that looking at Judy is too harsh, that the film is too militant, that we need to soften our speech around it, that it's not commercial. It's not commercial. Tell that to the line of women, the 1 in 3 women who experience domestic violence, who line up at the end of these screenings and talk to me about their stories. And sometimes for the first time, not because stories like Judy's mean a lot to these people. And it's a statistically insignificant portion of people. And furthermore, it's not just this 1 in 3 women. It's these 1 in 3 women and their moms and their daughters and their sisters and their friends and everybody who loves them who is also affected by the violence. But there is a big culture of silence around it, not only silencing the victim in the court system, but silencing those of us who have escaped and healed from talking about it because we're angry bitches or whatever. I hope I can say bitches on this podcast, but like,
we gotta bleep.
It's
well, I'll know what you said, but we gotta bleep.
It's, to me, that's so offensive, and maybe it's made me a little more spiky. I have spines now, but you know, thank goodness I have spines because nobody else was rushing in to protect me. So what do you want me to do?
Yeah, and going back to this, I mean, there is something that I wanted to say before that was about Bonnie, which, you know, we talk about Judy and her strength, but Bonnie's strength to keep standing strong and saying not until he says he's guilty. You know, that's so hit home. And her you know, her siblings, Judy's siblings and her daughters and their strength to be able to carry on. And it does impact. The impact of domestic abuse is phenomenal. And you're absolutely right, Patricia, is you know, like with the non-molestation orders, and they take the mickey. You know, you get an order that says they've got to stay 200 meters away from you. They'll stand 201 meters away. So even if you call the police then say, well, he's 201 meters away. We can't do anything. And I would like to know just exactly which group in society, if this same thing was happening to, would actually make, because they do know, people do know, and they know what's happening and they know it needs to change. So which group in society does it need to happen to for it to matter, when it doesn't matter, when it's majority women? You know, if the figures were the other way round and it was the majority of women, and it is gendered and it's not gendered and it can happen to anybody, but it's the majority of women for socio-economic reasons and all sorts of others. But if 1 in 3 men were being murdered by their female partners, if it was 1 in 3 wives who were murdering their husbands and their children because their husbands were wanting to leave them, if it was 1 in 3 men who were being told they couldn't have their own bank accounts, they couldn't spend their own money, they couldn't cut their loaf of bread a certain way, they couldn't breathe, they weren't able to sleep. You know, if that was happening the other way round, how quickly do we think this problem would be solved?
Well, that's
I'm
exactly
just asking the question. I don't know if it would be any different, but I would like to ask the question because it's, you know, not happening. If Judy had been arrested 30, and this goes back to Kat's question actually, and I think this is a really interesting one. If Judy had been arrested at 31 priors, what do we think might actually have been the case with her, and how quickly would she have been stopped from doing this time and again to different male partners?
Look at what happened with Gabby Petito and all that caught on film. And you can see the camaraderie in them talking to him. And you know, they really mulled around in what they were going to do. And I think there was like 3 calls like of domestic stops with those guys. The Gabby Petito and whatever his name was, I can't remember, and I don't care to remember him. But it was just pattern behavior. Any survivor could look at that and see exactly what happened. And, you know, and another thing I just want to touch on a little bit, and I could talk to you guys all day, but Bonnie's and you are always welcome on the show if you want to bring something to us and talk about it, and we'll get it out as much as we can. The other thing is the humanness that you both brought into the movie. You didn't shy away from it, and the humanity, and like your son singing to Judy, the Beatles song was so. Oh,
yeah, it keeps us grounded.
All of it, and how it's just so rounded in just the humanity. And that's really what this channel is about. That's really what we want, is to have voices be heard and listen to our humanity. Because I don't think it's too far.
And we certainly will, you know, support you. And I think you've probably found this with all of the survivors that you've spoken to. And Judy herself said this. Her sister said that Judy herself had said, even in the state that she was in, the pain that she was in, the trauma she'd gone through, the you know, the fact that the defense lawyer got at her for 2/3 of her deposition. She didn't even get to just speak her whole deposition herself. But Judy herself saying, you know, that she wanted to help others not go through what she'd suffered.
I can't tell you how many times she said she didn't want, if she could help just one woman not go through. And she said over and over again, just one woman not go through the pain and the suffering and the mental and physical abuse that she went through, and no one listening to her. If she could just prevent that from one woman, she said that her suffering would be worth it. She said that more than one time to me, to the prosecutor. It was a lot.
Well, and I think you touched on, you know, with her case, the verbal, the emotional, the psychological abuse that isn't really talked about, that people just go, well, I never got hit, so it's not really domestic violence, which we talk about a lot here because it is domestic violence. Your brain hurts. You can't think. You can't. I mean, there's a reason why there's coping skills that are not necessary. You go against yourself. You betray yourself in these situations. They're not normal things that you would do, but they're there to help you survive.
With it starting with the emotional abuse and then going to the verbal abuse. She talked a lot about that. And I think that's so true. And so many women don't speak up because when it is the emotional abuse, or it even leads to the verbal abuse, for whatever reason, women just will not speak up to that. Well, I shouldn't have done that. He wouldn't have said that. He shouldn't have treated me that way. Oh, he treated me that way because he had a bad day. And it's really, women sometimes don't even realize they're being so abused emotionally, and then until it turns to the verbal, and then the verbal obviously escalates into like the very good idea we're talking about with the stages, into once you go from verbal into physical. So Judy did talk a lot about that, but she also talked about how cool that was in the beginning too.
But I think that, I think you were really honest about the fact that you were talking about, like, I think you're too hard on yourself, but I think I think it was an important statement in saying he came over and he basically conned you into believing him. He knew where to go. And I think, we don't even really, get into how the family is manipulated, how friends are manipulated, how people don't even realize, you get into those stupid sayings that there's two sides to every story. It takes two to tango, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, you get conned and then you come and we'll talk, because you just don't understand. It's not what you think it is. It's not even close. And I loved your honesty in that moment, and so many other moments that there was just such honesty. And I really think everybody should see it and have a better understanding of what this looks like for the person going through it, for the family watching their person go through it, and for the God, we just need help with getting this better and getting this right, so that people like Judy don't have to suffer. And we talk about it. We're not going to suffer alone.
The family suffering too is just unmentionable too in society today. I don't think we put any emphasis on what the family goes through when you're going through this. I can't begin to tell you what her girls have gone through after all of this, and then not being told that we're victims and that we're not victims. And Judy's foundation had the ripple. It's a drop with a ripple going through the water as the symbol, and that ripple, I always said, was systemic for all the different people and lives that domestic violence impacts. And I just don't think that we put enough emphasis on that. And if we did, perhaps we would take it harder and we would handle it with stiffer penalties.
Could I just ask you to explain what the Judy Foundation is?
Sure. I started Judy's. It's a nonprofit organization that I started in Judy's honor and in her memory. And the reason I did that was because of all of the systemic failures that Judy encountered. So I said, I started this nonprofit to raise money to begin putting things like, if you will, the 1 through 8 that we talked about, with the people on the ground, to get the funding so that we can roll that out on the, first of all, if you will, for the first responders, to work with legislator on the C4, on the nonprofit, to change these laws, to stiffer laws, because it impacts the victim and the families beyond what society is willing to even turn their head and look at. So that's the legislative side, is to take it to a national level, to say somebody has to make this a hate crime and expand Judy's law. When you have 31, I mean, I don't even know, his rap sheet was so long, I couldn't even count them, and they were all women. All women. So if we can put some things in place, I mean, Trish and I talked a lot about drunk driving, and there's stiffer penalties, 2 and 3, but you hear his sheet and there's rape in there, and they plea it down to something else, and it's his history was beyond, but we don't put any visibility around that. And then we don't put any visibility around what it does to the family. So then we have all these systemic breaks, such as, like, we need to get legislation straightened around. We need to get our first responders, the data that they need, as you discussed. And then our long-term goal is to build Judy's Haven. And that's really near and dear to my heart too. That's a facility where women can go and they can take or men, they could think of it like an extended stay or little apartment units. They can take their children, they can take their pets, whatever is near and dear to them. And we have another floor, we kind of have done some blueprints where there is counseling on site, and there's a resource center that what's available, whether it's a single mom or a single dad, or a grandma such as me, who's taken the children in and now is faced with raising children on a limited income that you don't plan for in your retirement years to take on. So that facility is near and dear to get that built, to help women to have a place to go. And we'd really like to keep children. And when I think about Judy's Haven, let's focus back on the construction of the family and not the deconstruction of the family, right? I mean, society, the police show up and we'll take the kids to children's services or the care center, and then that's another reason women won't call, is because they're fearful of that. And then you're fearful, well, maybe there's not enough milk, and they suddenly, our society, even first responders, our benefits are geared towards pulling the family apart. So a good example is, if I would have let Judy's 2 little girls go into a child care, like children's services, state funded facility, and would have been a foster parent or grandparent, then the state would send me money to support them. But because we said, no, we're a family, we'll always be a family, we're not going to do that. We're all about staying together and not traumatizing the kids more, because children, even babies, are traumatized through this. They said, well, we won't help you then. So Judy's Foundation said, well, we're going to raise money and we're going to go help that grandma, that aunt, that uncle, whomever is trying to keep this family together through these tumultuous times of abuse. Because in our systems here in the US, it's just not there. There's just no resources, unless you want to go, as society says, more of a deconstruction perspective, pulling the family apart. And Judy really didn't want that.
That's absolutely fantastic. And Tricia, I think you were saying earlier before we came on camera about that it's really holistic. It's the holistic aspect as well, which just sounds incredible. This sort of one-stop shop where you can get all the help that you need, rather than it being in silo and disparate. You've got to go there for that kind of help, you've got to go to police for that help, you've got to go to social services for that, none of them talking to each other. I think it's absolutely fantastic.
Well, thank you. Just has to be. We just have to help other victims, and we just have to. It has to change. We have to put our focus back on this, or to even begin to build society back.
That's exactly. And that's why we do what we do here on this channel, is we try to just bring conversation, because we feel like, how can you make laws when you don't when society doesn't even understand what it is. They have no idea. They don't even know they're in it when they're in it. They just know, oh, he has an anger management problem, or she has an anger management problem, or
I mean, I have to say, I don't know that it's always that. I think, we do know we're being abused. We do know it's wrong, but it's, as you said earlier, we're being trained to be silent about it. That's the problem, is where is the threshold? Where is the bottom line? And we're trained to allow certain behaviors or excuse certain behaviors going against our own instinct, actually, very often. I mean, you said that, Bonnie, your instinct with Michael, because society says, no, we can't be that simplistic. We can't be that black and white and just call out bad behavior and say, because it's not just once or twice, it's when it happens time and time again. And that is the difference between abuse and you just having a bad day. It's what's being really understood now is it's the patterning and it's the repetition and it happening. They can even do the cycles of it, the abuse cycle and stuff. So it's understanding that. But I think going back to Judy and the film and what you've all done, and the validation that it gives all those women that come to you on all of those screenings is what is just priceless. And that's what makes the difference and brings us all together as an army, all supporting you and everybody else who does work like this, so that it ends it for all of us as a society.
I mean, that's why we
applaud you.
That's why we named this channel the Guardians War Cry. It's all of us together.
I love
crying out. And we're just so honored to have you both here and listen to your story. And
together we can make a difference.
Exactly. And I believe all 5 of us are together now. So
yeah, y'all are stuck with me. Like,
yeah.
Now, so.
Exactly. We hang on to each other. We're like, what do you need? How can we help? And that's why we're here.
Would you mind sending me your your poem?
I would absolutely love to send it to you.
Are you gonna give her the ability to be able to use that where she wants to, Bethany?
Of course, yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want a copy.
Will you sign it too?
Yes.
Please,
of course.
That should go right on the wall when you get Judy.
You can help me brainstorm a name for it, because I
special post for that. I'm beyond excited to get that and sign it and frame it, and there'll be a special place for it. Yeah. So now we're all connected.
Yes, I love it.
Thank you so much for having us on and helping with the, I hope people are able to find the film. We can send you some links if you want to post that in the bio, but it's May 23rd on Paramount Plus. It's available, to the wider audience, which I believe is also in the UK as well. So,
we're really
we'll be sharing far and wide.
We'll be plugging it a bunch.
Thank you very much.
Let's stay together and get together again.
Yeah,
most definitely.
I keep you updated on the foundation and what we're doing, and we can share ideas. Love your idea. Yeah.
Please,
Bethany, will you tell them what your initial thought of the title was and see what Judy thinks about that? Or not Judy, Bonnie thinks, sorry.
Yeah, I was like, wait, I forgot now. I have to find my text to you.
Do you need me to do it?
Okay, so my title, possibly, one that I was tossing around was Silent Screams, a tribute to Judy.
I love that. Because she was silenced, and she says in the movie, he silenced me again. I mean, she kept telling me that, like, we cleared that. That's just perfect.
Okay.
It's straight out of the documentary too. I love the time. Yeah, because Trish definitely captured that with how he kept silencing her. Yeah. How fitting.
Yeah, I told her. I said, wait till you get to talk to her, and you'll see if you'll get a feel of what you believe and how you think.
I think it's beyond perfect, because she was so frustrated that he no one would listen, and he kept silencing her. And then even when she was sick and he's in the court system, he pleads no contest, so she can't testify. I mean, it's just, that is just perfect.
I was screaming at my screen, and I cried so much, but I was screaming when that happened. I was like, are you serious? What? Like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. I'm so glad that we get to be that voice, and we get to be that loud whisper, you know, because that whisper is going to turn into that scream, and we're going to be above the noise.
And
Judy's voice, Judy's story is going to be told.
Yeah, I'm so blessed to be here with you guys. I just can't tell you how blessed I am.
Well, you can reach out anytime to any of us, Bonnie and Tricia. Tricia and I have had some great conversations. I know you guys have to get going probably because we're 2 hours in.
This was incredible. Thank you guys very much, and we're looking forward to the screening with your group on the 21st. Yes.
Yeah, we went through and did it last night, and it worked really well. So we're excited.
Figured out.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I'll shoot you I'll probably shoot you an email about that beforehand as well. But thank you guys.
Thank you. Patricia, just well done.
Love to you all.
To all of you.